Hi, everyone, and welcome to the New Jersey Student Climate Challenge, PD, Teacher Professional Development on, let me double check the date, yep, February 16th. Sorry, all these days are blurring together. We are so very excited to welcome folks from SubjectToClimate. The session title for today is Igniting Change in Your Classroom. And it goes without saying, of course, but I guess I should say thank you so much to our funders, the Drumthwacket Foundation, the Exelon Foundation, Atlantic City Electric, and of course, Sustainable Jersey and Sustainable Jersey for Schools. So real quick, if you're unfamiliar with the New Jersey Student Climate Challenge, the challenge this year is open to all students in public schools from grades 6 through 12. We're hoping that students will be working with teams of between 2 to 12 students. We don't want to get those team sizes too big because we want to make sure that all student voices can be heard on this action project. And that is the actual idea, is that students working together will complete a school or a community-based action project related to addressing either the human causes of climate change or the negative impacts of climate change on our environment. And through that action project, in addition to actually doing the project, create a short video about what they were able to accomplish, why they undertook this project, the challenges, the opportunities, all that fun stuff. There's lots more information about the challenge itself at our website, which I will drop into the link, but you can always find it by Googling New Jersey Student Climate Challenge and Sustainable Jersey for Schools. The timeline for the challenge is over the month of February. We have lots of educational sessions, both for students and for their teachers. April 1st is when those challenge submissions should be submitted. Over the month of May, we'll be reviewing those submissions and the finalists will be announced. And then in June, we're looking forward to having an awards ceremony hosted at the Drumthwacket Mansion, hosted by the Governor and First Lady. And to entice those students to participate, we have tons of great grants for schools. So $2,500 for first place at the middle school and high school level, and then smaller amounts for second and third. But we're so excited to be able to support future climate action and future environmental and sustainability focused projects. So I am going to hand it over to our fantastic speakers for today, Dan and Margaret. Stop my share and hand it over to the two of you.
Thank you for the wonderful introduction. Yes. All right. We're really glad to be here, to be able to share our platform with all of you and hopefully ignite some change in New Jersey classrooms. It's just lovely to be here. My name is Dan Castrogano. I'm the Chief Content Officer of SubjectToClimate. So that means I'm in charge of all content. And let's go ahead and hit present here. So we have resources and we have news articles and we have lesson plans, and I'll take you through our platform and show you everything that we have. A little bit more about myself. I've been a classroom teacher for 11 years, teaching in elementary and middle and high school. I taught science, English, math, social studies, and spent most of my time in the middle grades teaching history, and then later in the middle and upper grades teaching climate and sustainability as well. I taught in Ohio for 4 years, and then I taught in Connecticut for 7 years, and then I joined SubjectToClimate in June 2021 and have been full-time with SubjectToClimate since then. And I'll pass to Margaret for her introduction.
Hi all, I'm the Chief Operating Officer of SubjectToClimate, and I was a classroom teacher for several years in high school. I mainly taught social studies and specifically in economics and entrepreneurship and business management. So that's my background, and a lot of what I did within the classroom was bring in exciting and relevant issues to students. And this is what really sparked this journey and the beginning of SubjectToClimate. And I'm really excited to talk to this group of teachers because I know you guys are working on student action projects. And so that's something that I've always integrated in the classroom. And we hope that SubjectToClimate can help you as you begin your student action projects as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Margaret. So here are just a few questions at the top for a bit of food for thought. your personal connection to climate change. For me, I just became a father last year, and that comes with it sort of a whole slew of emotions as it relates to the climate crisis. And so that's pretty much my motivator right now. If anybody would like to share in the chat sort of your personal connection to climate change, that would be nice to hear as well. But for me, that's why I take action with Subject to Climate and in my personal life as well. Second sort of food for thought here is, who are climate change teachers? And I think a lot of people usually think of sort of the middle school science teacher, but we at Subject to Climate believe wholeheartedly that everybody is a climate teacher, K through 12, all grades, all subjects, all humans on Earth. It is our collective responsibility to teach about climate change. And our third question here, the biggest barrier for teachers when they want to teach about climate. For me, it was kind of finding time, and sort of, I was teaching history, and so I had student clubs and wanted to get all this climate action rolling at my school, but kind of logistics was kind of difficult. And I know that's what we're going to talk about today, is to try to ignite some change and to make some change happen with some student-led climate action. And so let's take a look at our agenda here. So we're going to look at a case study that Margaret will take us through. And then number 2, I will walk you through our platform and what we have to support you in school. And then we'll look at a bit of planning time and give you some ideas for planning some action in your school. And with that, I will pass to Margaret.
Thanks, Dan, so much. So I wanted to give an example of how, I've integrated community projects and school projects and even competitions, much like what you're getting your students involved into in my classroom. So I'll start with, the problem that I was facing when I was trying to do this. So here on the screen, you see this really, really not appealing graph. And this was what I had to teach in my IB economics course, which was a high stakes course. At the end of the 2 years, there's an IB exam that mainly determines where the students went to university. So super high stakes exam, complicated college level economics. But, that's why I applaud a lot of the teachers on this call and also teachers who are watching this for bringing in real life experiences, knowing that you have restricted and packed curriculum. Because students learn the most with an authentic audience and challenges that are real. But it's really hard, as we just mentioned, when you have a super packed curriculum. How do you fit these projects within your classroom? So on this screen, as I mentioned, this is what I needed to get done in one day or 2 days in a unit, which was this graph. And this graph represents the types of things that my students scored lowest on every year. And it's a topic called externalities. So I wasn't even trying to think about, integrating climate change. I wasn't thinking about community projects, but what I was really thinking about was, how do I get my students to learn about externalities when it's something they score the lowest on every single year? So I took a step back and tried to think about, why do people need to know about externalities? At its core, externalities is when, somebody other than a buyer or a producer experiences positive or negative effects from an economic transaction. And I looked at, this is exactly why we face a lot of issues in society, such as climate change. A lot of people aren't incentivized to consume less. A lot of producers and factories are not incentivized to produce less. So what I did was try to create a community project around this unit about externalities. And it started with, defining a problem in society and looking at the causes of it. So we looked at, climate change and some of the causes of climate change within an economic lens. And then we gathered evidence using economic concepts of why it happened. And that's when that graph started to make sense to people. we then identified solutions to solve these problems. How do we incentivize people, for example, to eat less meat when we know that there are negative externalities from it? And that's kind of on the screen. This is actually a video that I used in the classroom as to show them the negative externalities in beef, or buying beef and consuming it. And then we would use similar things to identify how to solve the problem. And the students would try to implement it in their school. How do I make people, incentivize people to consume less meat if that is causing a negative externality? And so they actually ended up doing a campaign in schools. And then in the next slide, this is the outcome that, for once, my students actually understood what negative externalities meant because they were applying it. They knew the pros and cons of various solutions. And for many who traditionally felt left out of economics, I think this was the major thing. They actually could see themselves as economists. And I'm really happy that like a lot of my students that took IB economics are majoring in economics right now in university. But I think one of the things that I found doing this is that it took a lot of work doing this, coordinating student projects to align with what's in the curriculum. So today, what we're really trying to show you is hopefully a tool to help you find the resources that you'll need to support your students, to spark interest, for them to understand about, for example, topics like climate change, and for them to even use on their own. So I'm going to pass it back to Dan for him to walk you through the resource that we've created.
Awesome. Thanks, Margaret. And so here's our homepage on Subject-to-Climate. And we are a nonprofit online connector for climate resources. And our goal is to provide credible, engaging, and unbiased resources for all teachers of all subjects and all grades. And so our goal is to do all that heavy lifting that you don't have to do on Sunday night or Monday night before class starts the next day. So we want to give everything to you and make it as easy as possible to implement climate education in your classroom. Before I take you to the platform, I just wanted to highlight these benefits of our organization. The first is that everything is free. So we strongly believe in equity. That is one of our core values. And so if something is behind a paywall, it does not go on our platform. The second one is credible resources. So anything that goes on our platform goes through scientific credibility. We have a team of scientists who make sure that everything is correct. And so in Margaret's example, that Vox video went through the scientists to make sure that everything is scientifically accurate. The third item is that it's reviewed by teachers. So there are at least 2 teachers who look at the resource to make sure that it is easy to use and not cumbersome or clunky, or you have to click 10 times to get it to pop up. So it goes through scientists and it goes through teachers before it goes on our platform. We have easy navigation to get around, and I will show you how that works shortly. And lastly, our goal is to save teachers time. That's the goal, is to give everything that's on the internet and everything we create in-house to you, such that it saves you time and makes it easier. I also want to highlight our content partners. We have over 45 official content partners where we draw resources from. So it includes people like Jill Pelto, who's an artist who was featured on the cover of Time magazine, big green orgs like the Nature Conservancy, Ecosia, the search engine that makes great videos on regenerative agriculture. I've got 2 more slides of content partners here. So Climate Science, they make great stuff, especially for younger students. The Global Oneness Project, they make great films. Stay Grounded looks at emissions in the aviation sector. Here are some more of our official partners. The Yale Program on Climate Change Communication, the Juice, which is daily news articles for kids, and I'll show you more about that as well. And then art institutions as well, like Art Works for Change, and they have great online galleries on climate change. So those are just some of our content partners there. And so I'm going to show you 3 things. 1 will be our resource database. 2 will be our student-friendly news articles. And 3 will be our lesson plans. And so let's have a look. And as I go through everything, you can ask questions in the chat and I'm happy to explain more. So here is our homepage. And you can look through lesson plans here, or you can type anything in here. We've got our news articles here, but I think I'm going to show you our resource database first. So you go to resource database. And there are lots of ways to find what you're looking for. One way is to go to this drop-down bar over here, and you can find a provider. We have stuff from lots of different places. And so there are more than 45 providers here. So we have official partnerships with lots of people. And then we also pull stuff from everywhere else. And so say I click on climate science, it automatically filters and shows that there are 79 items from this content partner. I can further filter with what I'm looking for. So say I'm looking for social studies. It'll show me 14 items that are from climate science and that are tagged as social studies. With any of this stuff, I can click and unclick to filter. So I can also filter by grade. So say I'm teaching 5th graders. These are all the items that are tagged for 5th graders. I can sort by region. And so we would be in New Jersey considered USA Northeast. So we've got 48 items here. So we've got Boston, New York City, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts. So you can filter that way as well. You can filter by type. So we have lots and lots of videos on our platform. Say I want to listen to a podcast. We've got 25 podcasts you can use in your classroom. And finally, we have 6 sets of standards that we use. So say you want to use something that's related to Common Core ELA. This is what we've got that's tagged with those standards. And so let me take you through a specific resource and show you what we have. So I can use the search bar as well. And I typed in personal action, and I'm looking for this one here. So for each of our resources, we have lots of things to help you quickly decide if you want to use it in your classroom or not. So we've got the grade bands, the subjects, the types. We have a synopsis. So this is an online course. And we also have teaching tips as well. In our teaching tips, we highlight the positives. We highlight additional things that are useful to know before using it in your classroom. And we highlight things that would be useful for differentiating or sort of, and other resources that are related to this resource. We have scientist notes from our scientists, and we have standards that are connected to this resource. And then if you click view resource, it goes directly to where you need to go. So this resource is awesome. It's an online interactive course. You can click simple or advanced over here. And this stuff relates directly to what Margaret was talking about, that this could be used to spark climate action at school or with a group of students, saying, look, we got eating, we've got shopping, we got flying, driving, consumption, having children, activism, right? And even this philosophical bit here, does it matter, right? So they can use any of these things to start sort of a campaign at school. And so I wanted to highlight that resource. So that's number one, our resource database. Number two are our news articles. And so on our homepage, they are here. And we've partnered with The Juice, like I mentioned before. And you can click in here and you get a news article. The Juice is a paid subscription service. We get their stuff, their climate news in particular, for free on our platform, which is wonderful. And so almost every weekday, there's a news article where something is related to climate change. And so here is this news article. And what's really cool about this, first of all, is you can see it's for grades 5 through 6. And there are vocabulary words that if you click on them, you get a definition and a pronunciation, which is wonderful as well. After each one, there's also a comprehension question. And so here they're connected to the Common Core ELA standards for reading informational text. And when students click on one of these, they see if they are correct or not. And so this is wonderful for sort of those in-between times, like the beginning of an English class or the end of an English class, or if somebody finishes something early, they can do this. The news articles are also across 4 grade bands of reading complexity. So you can see that the text changed and even the vocabulary words changed, and this question changed as well. So this can be differentiated on the spot for different learners. You know, you can say click up 1 level or click down 1 level, depending on reading level. Here's 9 through 10, and then we also have for juniors and seniors, much more complex text and much more complex question. You can also click on this button down here, and it will bring you to related resources. So it auto searches droughts in this case, and we have 26 items related to droughts. And then finally, with our news articles, you can click this button up here, and you can subscribe to getting these climate news articles directly to your inbox if you like. And that is item number 2 that we have on our platform, are our news articles. Finally, we have our lesson plans. And these lesson plans are made by the team at SubjectToClimate. So we have a big team of teachers who create these lesson plans. And say I would like to search 4th grade. And at first, I'd actually like to highlight our interdisciplinary units. So we have a series of units where you can teach these all in a row. And so we have a green spaces unit, we have 6 in a row. We've got an air quality unit, which is 5 lessons. And we have a renewable energy unit, and that is 6 lessons. And these are for students in grades 3 through 5. And as you can see, they cut across lots of different disciplines: English language arts, health, justice, social emotional learning, and stuff like that too. And before I go into one of these in particular, I also want to highlight that we have justice as a topic. And so we have lots and lots of stuff on environmental justice. We have stuff on racial justice and economic justice, Indigenous justice, gender justice, historical justice. And so we want to highlight how climate change disproportionately impacts different groups. And so we have lots of lesson plans on environmental justice. And so let's take a look at, if we go back to our interdisciplinary lesson plans, let's look at what is a green space from the green spaces unit. And so we use a 3I model for developing our lesson plans for inquire, investigate, and inspire. And this part is all about climate action, is empowering students to make change, whether that's in their personal lives or at school or globally. And that's the goal of this 3rd section here. So it's got everything you need, instructions here, related resources, how long everything should take. Here's our 3rd section, the inspire section. And so in this one, students are creating their own green spaces and making their own maps. Here are teaching tips. Here are standards. And what's really the game changer as far as saving teachers time are these accompanying teaching materials. So if you click here, it will ask you to make a forced copy. And it's a teaching slideshow that's ready to go on your board. And it can be used digitally, it can be used in the classroom, but it's basically just ready to go. We've done all the heavy lifting for you. So we've got the inquire section, sentence starters, we've got videos that are already embedded. And so everything is basically ready to go, right? Embedded Google Maps, right? Examples of students creating their own green spaces in their communities. And so that is our teacher slideshow. And then we've also got vocabulary cards, and I've opened those beforehand, right? So this goes with the whole unit, right? So these can be used during the whole unit. Students can, learn these. You can do a quiz on these. And so we've got these as well. I wanted to just highlight one more lesson plan, and we'll move forward from there. So if I go back to lesson plans and go to interdisciplinary, here is an example of climate action. It's the 5th one in our air quality unit, and it's the no idling campaign. And so what we've created here, right, transportation is the biggest source of emissions in the United States, right? And so the pickup lines, if that's something that your school has, often has really poor air quality. And so this lesson plan basically has everything students need, including student worksheets like this one to take data for, to try to take data and then convince people to not idle in line. And so I wanted to highlight this lesson plan as well. And that is our 3rd item, our lesson plans. And coming out of that, I think I'm going to pass back to Margaret to talk a little bit more about the 3 I's. And I know I was just speaking for a long time, but thank you for listening as I showed our platform.
Thank you so much, Dan, for that. I think Dan did a great job showing the lesson plans. And one of the things that he highlighted was that the 3 I's, the inquire, investigate, and inspire. And a lot of these frameworks might be able to be used in your classroom, depending on what standards you use, because it follows, it's very simple, and it follows, frameworks that are already baked into NGSS, C3, IB Circle of Inquiry. So when we created this, we wanted climate change teaching and learning to really be accessible to all educators. And another way that it can help relate with the student action projects that you are using is that you can also think of it as a good way to get students in the inquiry mode before they even start pursuing their own student action project. I think it's really important for students to take that time to inquire and really, again, investigate before they are inspired to actually take climate action. So you can also use this framework and imitate it as you introduce your student action project. So again, whereas I know the student action project might be over a long time period, you can at least get started with your students practicing this cycle of inquiry, investigate, inspire in shorter lesson plans to help model what they would need to do for their bigger project. And so one of the things that we hope that you will be able to do on your own time is to take some time to review and try to find one resource that might help your students or your next lesson. And we are here also to take any questions on this webinar as well. One thing that I would love to add is that as you are looking for these resources, we've had a use case where a classroom actually asked their students to use our database to find resources for their own project, which is quite interesting because our database is for teachers, teacher lesson plans, but with the filter of articles, for example, you can feel assured that your students are looking through articles that have been through a credibility check as well. So these are some ways that hopefully you can integrate it into your planning. And last but not least, if you find anything great, let us know. You can definitely let us know by writing a review on the actual website or send us an email. We love to hear what teachers are using in their classroom. Yeah, and with that being said, I think that we'll leave a couple of links in the chat so that if you wanted to follow us and get access to or get updates on what we're doing, feel free to do that. So I'll put these links as well as our newsletter.
So we do have a couple of teachers that have joined us. So if you're done with the presentation, do you want to talk about the teacher task force?
Yeah, this is our last thing. And I know that a lot of teachers, every teacher on here you guys are from New Jersey. So definitely we are looking to help support New Jersey public school teachers as as climate changes, the standards will be adopted across all content areas and all grade levels. So a lot of the lesson plans that you saw on our screen, these were created by teachers. And so we are seeking New Jersey teachers to help us create lesson plans in our fellowship. So I'm going to put a link into the chat on the New Jersey fellowship. And so we are really now looking for English and social studies as well as performing arts teachers. And with that being said, thank you so much, Sustainable Jersey, for having us.
So
Yeah, definitely happy to answer questions, Renee. And then I saw Andrea's question too.
yeah, so if you could stop sharing your screen, maybe we could just have everybody come on and revert back to the meeting.
That would be awesome. Yes.
Yeah. Kelly and Elaine, are you with us?
I'm here. My video's not working right now.
Okay.
Oh, there it goes.
I'm here as well, Renee, just no video option right now. Sorry, the connection's not strong enough.
Oh, that's okay. I just wondered if you had any questions about this, about the presentation or about the SubjectToClimate resources.
I don't have any questions right now. I'm actually excited to say that I am part of the New Jersey Climate Change Teaching Fellowship. I just had our welcome meeting yesterday, and so I'm very excited to be part of that process. It's a wonderful group, and with Margaret and Dan yesterday as part of all of that, I'm energized and excited working with sixth graders on this particular project, but now working myself on the teacher project. So I'm trying to connect all of that, looking for resources for my students and now putting myself in a direction with curriculum work. So really exciting.
Great. And I think Kelly, you're one of the fellows too, right?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Great. So I was wondering, I thought that the news article resource was really great. Do you, Elaine or Kelly, use like news articles in your classroom, like teaching?
I've
So,
been using stuff
go
from
ahead.
Geo and go ahead, Elaine. I'll wait till you're done.
No, Kelly, go. Sorry.
I've been using stuff from Time and Nat Geo. I didn't know about this resource before our meeting yesterday, and I was browsing through our email from before. So this is way more appropriate than what I have been using. I've had to modify and kind of, because I'm K-5, so modify everything that I've seen and kind of bring it down to their level. So this is really great.
Thanks.
Yes, and I was going to say, in my position, I'm a specialist, so I'm a school-wide enrichment. I have students one period a week for 40 minutes. So for me, it's bits and pieces of things that fit to kind of be that inquiry part, where this is how I hook them in with sharing a little something. But like Kelly said, this is a new resource to me as well. And these are far better than some of the things I'm trying to use. So I'm already excited about that. But I do want to say that I intend to share this within our elementary school, because I can see huge value in this. In our ELA classrooms, our social studies, science, the teachers are really working hard in New Jersey to promote reading and of all types, fiction and nonfiction, in every discipline, so that when you're in your science classroom, the teacher's really building reading strategies there. And this is a perfect entry or exit ticket kind of thing for those teachers. So these are definitely valuable, definitely.
Great, thanks. Were there any other questions? Andrea, do you want to ask your question?
Sure. I was just, I have a couple, just trying to, I mean, I have some ideas, but I would love to hear from the two of you or the teachers on the line, or Mark, of course. I know your expertise is always welcome, but thinking about these types of project-based learning, problem-based learning, whatever, solutions-based learning, I know some people are trying to go towards, how do we bring that to students who haven't really had those kind of experiences before, without these projects kind of all of a sudden becoming that time suck on the day, and the lessons, the project that you thought was going to take 3 or 4 days in the classroom, all of a sudden now is taking 2 weeks to get through, which can, have a negative impact on teachers who may not want to try that again with all of the uncertainty. Any ideas for how to support teachers and to do this type of work, but also to support students to think about learning in this way as well? I know it's kind of a two-pronged question.
That's a great question. I'll take a stab at it first, I guess. I ran tons of projects like this, like in real class and in like clubs and after school and before school and all that stuff. One is empower them and go with whatever they want to do, so they care about it. That's the most important thing. And so you can use our stuff to kind of teach them about droughts or idling or whatever, and then they might get really into it. And then the time suck is, yeah, like looking at the clock and like, oh, those 40 minutes are gone. Is I think coaching the students on what's really empowering is having a concrete thing that happens that they did, and whether that's like 3 days from now or 5 days from now, but kind of like funneling that like drive to like, okay, let's do this. And if you accomplish this, it's a W, it's a victory, and you've done something concrete. And that's kind of challenging depending on a lot of things, but I think funneling that appropriately and letting them drive it those are some of my thoughts. Yeah.
Another thing that I think is really important, that I think Dan hit it on the spot, like it's just so powerful when you have a student that's excited, that wants to take it further, that wants to actually spend X amount of time. And then I think the problem I presented at the beginning is that you also have a restricted curriculum, and it's kind of hard because you're already probably, and most teachers, a couple of days behind on what they need to get through. One of the things I thought was really useful is because I taught entrepreneurship, and one of the things in entrepreneurship is about design thinking and about not, and it's unfortunate because school doesn't teach you to be this way, that you should iterate quickly and come up with the most minimum viable product or something minimum to test. That's not perfect. And school doesn't teach you to do that, unfortunately, because school grades you to have everything perfect, but it really depends on your rubric, right? So I think allowing I always have with student projects like worksheets that accompany the students, that checkpoints. At this point you should be here, at this point you should be here. Even if your end project isn't what you really want to do, it's important in life to get something out there so you can get feedback and improve on it. And that's how I've really navigated with my students' projects, because they're like, I want to do like the most amazing thing at school and make a whole revolution about everybody not eating meat. And then it's like, okay, but what can you do within 2 weeks to test that idea? That's how I've been approaching a lot of it, and hopefully that'll help.
Yeah, no, and that's where I've been advising some of our teachers as well, that, it's awesome to want to put solar panels on your school building, but what's the next immediate step? Okay, you probably need to convince a school board, or you probably need to, first do some research so that you can be convincing at a school board meeting, kind of like, and just preparing and presenting at maybe a school board or presenting to the school building principal or whomever it is a good first project. And that's a good, like, tangible, attainable finish line. And then the next go round can be moving it forward and moving it forward and moving it forward. It doesn't have to be like, oh, that's our stopping point, but that is our initial goal, and that we don't have to go 0 to 60 in 3 days. We can go, kind of piecemeal. But that process is empowering, I agree, to the students to kind of get to choose their projects and choose their direction. And then I saw that there's some activity in the chat, but kind of the follow-up question then is, because I'm a big supporter in letting the students kind of drive the ship. How, when we have a school, schools have classrooms of 25-ish, roughly, sometimes more students. All of a sudden you have, teams of students, but they're all moving in different directions. Do you have any suggestions for helping to manage these different directions that students want to take projects?
Yeah,
So-
that's really tough,
Oh.
but happy to defer. Yeah.
No, so I was just thinking, as an enrichment, and I also teach our gifted and talented program, which is a smaller group of students and PBL all the time, because they generally come in with something that they want to save the world from, and they tell me where they need to go for the year. But when you're looking at this in a time constraint, two things popped into my head right away. Structure. So as the teacher, sort of have a roadmap yourself when you know how many days you have or how much time you have, and try to break that down in advance and kind of predict out where you know your students will be and how you can rein them in. And then also provide a structure for them. Like Dan was saying, you know, of how those benchmarks along the way, or achieving this or achieving that, and kind of not steering what they're excited about, but once they find that topic, steering them towards successful resource finding and writing letters or whatever the course might be. And also another thing I found helpful with the younger students is having roles defined and kind of letting the students come up with, well, here's what our challenge is. Now, what might be important for us to do, and what might some of the jobs be? And then they quickly figure out that they need a researcher, or they need a recorder, or they need someone to take on these roles. And that can really help when you're stuck on time, because everybody sort of knows what their part is supposed to be, and then it moves things along. Those were just two thoughts that I had.
That's great. Thank you.
That was awesome, Elaine. Yeah, I think and then differentiate, like you were saying, just to add on to that, to play to their strengths, especially for the introverted or extroverted students. Somebody has to talk to the school board, or somebody has to, research for 30 minutes on solar panels and, kilograms of CO2 saved. So I think that's a great point.
Mark, did you want to get in there too?
I wanted to just say how great I thought everybody's comments were, Elaine and Dan, and basically throw in a little analogy there that as the teacher, it's our jobs to show them the ladder that leads to whatever, and maybe help them get to the first step. And the best assessment and success we can achieve is after we're no longer helping them get up that first step, they can then go on to the second step and so forth. And that obviously has to, as you said, deal with the kids' individual strengths and weaknesses. And there's no way to know a lot of times that we've been successful. Because once they're out of our classrooms or out of our programs, it's hard to keep track of everybody, but at least we can provide them the first couple of steps.
Definitely.
And we're not out to save the world. We're out to save ourselves.
So one other question that I've had come up many times to kind of in talking with teachers about bringing in more climate change, because I agree, Dan, I think you were saying it is like, as a former middle school science teacher, like, yep, like that was who was the like epitome of like, oh, well, they cover climate change, so I don't have to kind of mentality. And we totally want to move away from that kind of mindset of, well, someone else is teaching it, so I don't have to. But in the day and age of so many kind of like, oh, and also teach this, oh, and also teach this, oh, and also teach this, that many of our teachers are experiencing, on top of, I know we were chatting before the recording started, like what I observed to be like the quicksand that teachers are being asked to walk across right now with the ever evolving, environment that COVID and other school issues are presenting to us. How do we encourage teachers to think of not only teaching about climate change, but encouraging students to take climate actions? How do we support them and not seeing it as just like one more add-on? So I got
That's a
stumped with
great
this question at one of our
Yeah.
earlier PDs. So I figured I know I stumbled to answer it because it's a hard question. So sorry to throw a zinger at you both, but I would love your feedback.
Hard questions are the best questions. Yeah, I mean, as teachers, you just get like whatever's hot, right? It's like we're going to do social emotional learning and we're going to do our vocabulary differently now, and then we're going to do this. And so I guess honestly, just like in my heart, just like if you can somehow convince your colleagues or your students just that the scale and the severity and the speed of the change is catastrophic, and you do it appropriately with whoever you're speaking to, and that it impacts everything, and you have to teach about it. It's the world we live in. And there's a great video on our site about climate change being a hyper object. It's like so you like can't think about it. It's like so hard to think about. But it impacts everything. And it's sort of seeing that video kind of changed how I think about it, is that I don't know. That's what I got. Yeah.
I don't know if I could jump in, but the motivation from the kids has fueled our teachers to really go forward with these lessons. They really get into it. And in our school, it was as simple as showing them a picture of the famous turtle with the straw stuck up his nose, and it started a revolution. I mean, our school has gone so far just from that single image. So it's kind of finding your hook. And certainly your website is going to be a huge push because the resources and the work is already done. So it's not like you're starting from, sorry, they're cleaning the floors. It's going to get really loud. It's not like you're starting from ground zero. Everything's there for you. So it's just opening up a resource that's already ready, and it's less lesson planning than some of the stuff you're doing in your own room to teach a math or a science or a language arts lesson. And so many of them have so many content areas already included in them that I think that this is like a great step for them to really engage in and hook their students. So hopefully that's a great push.
Yeah, Kelly, I was just gonna bring in a stat that I don't have the exact, so I'm a bit scared, but I'll paraphrase it. But I think there was a survey about like what students want to learn about, and climate change was placed as just right under like math skills and like reading, writing. And so that is powerful, because even if, you know, as a teacher, you're thinking about, oh my gosh, I have to get through these things. Just like in my case study, like I had to get through really hard college level econ concepts, but my students were like falling asleep when I was teaching about it. So it was like, how do I get them interested? And there are a lot of things that they care about. And when we talk about climate change, they listened and they did better. And so I don't know if framing it in that way is that kids want to learn about it. What we know that when we teach about something that has real life connections and applications, students absorb it better. That hopefully creates a little bit of buy-in. But I will add, it's much harder to do that, right? It's easier to just go over graphs, at least for me in econ. It's easier to do those worksheets. It's harder to bring in those concepts. I struggled bringing in real life concepts when I was teaching econ, not just for climate change, but for everything, because I struggled to find resources and data because they were supposed to work with real data. And I had to look at like, you know, university papers on econ, translate it to my students, and then take that data so they can play with it. I think this is also why we created SubjectToClimate, because we know that these are some of the barriers that a teacher might face when they want to bring in real life examples.
Yeah. No, and the only thing, just in listening to everybody and kind of thinking about it, I think that's one of the biggest reasons why I think that when we're teaching about climate, we're teaching it as like, it's not just a science issue, it's just socio-scientific issue that science, and when we're teaching science, scientists and science educators are really good, like, here's what is happening in our world, phenomena. But science I feel really, it struggles with asking or answering the questions about what should be happening next. Like, we're really good at like describing the phenomena, the scientific complexity of the situation, but the social complexity, I think, is where it's really interesting, where kids just like get so interested and so just engaged in the topic, where, well, what should we be doing about this, you know? we know this is a problem. What should be happening next? And that's where we're bringing in all these other content areas that I think make it so much more engaging, that we can't just leave it to be taught in a very cut and dry type of way, because that's not moving us forward on this problem. But Dan, I don't know if you had something else you wanted to add. I saw you unmuted.
Just wanted to add this too. I think we have a responsibility to our kids, right? There's this study from September that I just put in the chat. 10,000 young people ages 16 to 25, 10 countries were surveyed, and they're extremely worried. And so from a social emotional standpoint, 59% were very or extremely worried, 84% at least moderately worried. And so I think all educators have a responsibility to meet them where they are and to manage all of those climate feelings. And it's hard sometimes, but to turn those very complicated emotions into action. That's what I do. That's what helps me when I think about all this stuff. So.
Well, and I think that's where turning it into action is the key component that helps students to combat some of that anxiety and to be moving, past some of those negative emotions, negative connotations to it. I know I just caught a glimpse of the time, so I want to be respectful of everybody's time. I do have a couple of just like real quick closing slides and reminders, and then I will leave it back open to some more conversation or any other questions. But let me just go ahead and, oops, that's not the one I wanted to do. Yep, there we go. All right, so just, so let me try to minimize this, get this out of the way. Yep, so some of our upcoming sessions for students are, we have one tomorrow. We also have one tomorrow during the day and one tomorrow night. I'm really excited about the one tomorrow night, which is our student action panel, where we're going to be having New Jersey youth climate activists tell us about their work. So those are sessions for students. We also have some additional PD coming up around kind of some more resources around integrating climate change into your curriculum and thinking about how to protect New Jersey's habitats through student action, coming up next week and the week after. All sorts of resources available to you at the bit.ly address, which takes you to the Sustainable Jersey for Schools website for our project. Kind of more guidance around linking some of those resources to the New Jersey Student Learning Standards, thinking about bringing into helping, this back and forth between letting students drive the boat, between, not having any shipwrecks of going wild on things. But lots of great things out there. If you're watching this on the recording, please register, because that helps to give us a ballpark idea of who's participating, but also allows us to share future resources with you that we become aware of. And then, there are socials and some more content information. So thank you so much for the great conversation. I really appreciate all that we had to talk about today, and I'm sorry that it's 5 o'clock already, but happy to stay on for another minute or two if anybody has any questions or wants to chat further, has comments. I'd love to encourage it. But thank you.
Thank you for having us.